Hello everybody, thanks for joining our Facebook Live at lunch today. Today we're going to concentrate on adopting siblings, and we're very lucky today. We've got Mandy, who's one of our team managers and manages the Reading team, the adoption team, and we have Kat and Stephen, two adopters who adopted siblings, so we'll hear from them in a minute. So Mandy, why is it so important that we're actually talking about adopting siblings? Why are we looking for people to adopt?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're looking for people to adopt, lots of variety of different children, with different backgrounds. But I think for siblings, they often wait longer than single children for a variety of different reasons. And it's, we're going to hear in a while from Kat and Stephen, I'm sure, about some of the, the challenges of that and maybe some misconceptions. But what we really want is to, when it's right for the children, is to keep brothers and sisters together and not have them waiting for a long time. At the moment, like I say, they tend to wait a lot longer than single children.
And so when you're saying they wait longer, do the children tend to be older as well?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily, they can be. And when we're talking about sibling groups, I mean, we're talking twos as well as threes, fours, fives even, if you're really brave. There's a real need to keep, like I say, where it's right. It's not right for every sibling group to stay together. And some sibling groups are large sibling groups where they'll be separated in maybe a sibling group of two and one of three or whatever works for them. But where it's right for children, it just seems unfair really that they wait that little bit longer. And like I said, some are little, and I think Stephen, you'll be talking a little bit, and we both will be, about your own experiences. But we do have older children. There might be a 7-year-old with a 3-year-old, they could be a 1-year-old with a 3-year-old. There's lots of different combinations.
So what would you highlight as the benefits for the children? So there's keeping them together. Is there anything else you think of?
I mean, like I've just said, the waiting, it stops that waiting, gives them that sense of permanence and their real family, their adoptive family for much quicker. I think also it's that shared experience, it's that sharing. I think share is the word there. It's, the potentially, sharing the same culture, the same identity, but probably most importantly, shared experiences. And whether or not they're good or bad, they're living with somebody, throughout their childhood who has experienced the same or very similar to them. There's no need sometimes to understand it, to explain it. It's just, it is a shared experience. And I think, when we look at our own sibling relationships, they're usually, or can be, the longest relationships we have with people in our lifetime. So it's really great to be able to give them what they've started with of that shared experience to continue through their childhood into adulthood.
And I guess they can give each other support as well.
Yeah, and sometimes if it's an older child, for example, and maybe a much younger child, they can fill in some of those gaps. About what happened maybe when they lived with their birth family or when they lived with the foster carers. So they can be very supportive of each other.
As well as have rows and fight and play and all the rest of it.
Of course, yeah, all the normal kind of sibling relationship stuff.
And what would you say, thinking about the adopters, what's the benefit for thinking about adopting siblings?
Well, it's a ready-made family, if you like. If kind of your life plan or the way you're thinking about it is to have 2, 3, like I say, 4, 5 children, to do it all at once, you've got it ready-made. It means you don't need to go through the process again. I think it also can give you a real sense of, I don't know if achievement's the right word, but to actually think that you're keeping a sibling group together, to watch them. They may not, for example, have had a very positive relationship when they were with the foster carers or birth family. And, as a parent, you help develop that, you can help develop that bond with each other. And I think there's a real satisfaction from that. I think also, and this doesn't happen all the time, and I completely appreciate this, but having 2, they can play on their own sometimes. There's possibly a little bit of, them entertaining each other and themselves, and that less intensity of you to do it all. Sometimes with a single child, that's very intense, that relationship, because that single child is needy of you as a parent all the time. And sometimes that can be slightly less so with a sibling group.
Thank you. And just before we came on, we were discussing the things that we thought people who are thinking about adopting siblings might consider. And Stephen, you were saying about space and cars and practical things, weren't you?
Yeah, I think they're all important factors. You know, we wanted to make sure that we had enough living space to accommodate 2 children. As I say, that the cars we had were big enough to accommodate 2 buggies, 2 car seats, 2 changing bags. Yeah, all of those things for us were kind of key factors in siblings, and the age groups that we were looking at as well.
And would you say finances are part of the consideration?
Yeah, for sure. Because it's expensive. You know, you double the costs. If it's not on food, it's on nappies and clothing and all of those things. So yeah, to go from none to 2 financially is, you know, it is a big leap.
Kat, is there anything you want to add in terms of what people could consider at this point?
You say about the practicalities, and for us I think that was key, but actually we had a school age child when they moved in, as well as a younger sibling, and actually it gives you an immediate routine because you've got school involved. And so actually with my youngest, we'd take our eldest to school, we'd go to a play group, we'd come back and have lunch, she'd have a nap, we'd do some activities, and then we'd have to go and pick our eldest back up from school again. And actually that's quite a nice way of, you've got some structure to the day, and actually I think for us that really helped.
And I guess you're also naturally putting in some time for for one child, so they're not always, they've got some of your attention, haven't they, on their own?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so Kat, what's the makeup of your family? What does your family look like, and how old are your children now, and how old were they when you adopted them?
So our family is myself and my husband, and then we've got 2 children. So we've got a 9-year-old boy and a just turned 6-year-old girl. So I've got a house full of unicorn inflatable balloons at the moment. But when they moved in, they were 5 and 1. So there was a slightly bigger age gap between them, but actually it worked really well for us.
And Stephen, what's your family look like?
So there's myself and my husband. And then the boys are now 6 and 3, and when they came home were just over 3 and 8 months old.
Wow, that's so one is running around, and well, for both of you, one was running around and then
the other one was
falling
trying
around. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So for both of you, maybe starting with Stephen first, what made you decide to choose PACT in the first place?
So we did quite a lot of research online, kind of taking advice from other adopters, and the common thread that we seemed to get from everybody was that it was really important that you felt that the agency that you chose best reflected you as individuals, because the reality was this is probably going to be a lifelong relationship. You know, it's not a case of the process is done, here's your children and that's it. You know, it's very much a continued relationship, and maybe with breaks in there where, you know, additional support is not needed, and then you may find there are times when actually you do need to call upon somebody. So we went on to First for Adoption and did that postcode search, and PACT alongside several other agencies came up, and we made our initial inquiry. Just the information we were sent, the nature of the conversations that were being had, they resonated with us. It very much felt like a partnership from the outset, and that really worked for us.
Okay, and were you considering siblings before you approached PACT, or was that something that a thought developed later?
No, we definitely, I come from a sibling group of 4, and my husband comes from a sibling group of 6. So kind of big, if you like, is what we know. And we had always had a very clear idea that, you know, we wanted to replicate that in some way. So with the process for us being slightly longer, we decided that, yeah, we would kind of go hard and go fast straight away and go to the set from the outset.
And Kat, why did you choose PACT?
So for us, it was about what support was available, and the fact that, as you've mentioned, it is that you know, there's support available if you need it until your youngest is 18, and that's fabulous. Also the fact that you were looking to find children homes from all over England, and I think for us that just meant we were more likely to be able to find the right children for us, and that was really important.
And were you considering siblings before you started the process?
We got in our head sort of an idea of, we've both got siblings ourselves, and so I think we're in our head, we sort of said, well, probably two. We looked at the logistics of, you know, we had 2 spare rooms, and so that was, you know, a kind of an easy why we didn't say, oh, let's go and have 3. But you know, I think having that ability to only do the process once, I think, as you mentioned, Pandy, it was just quite nice that you have your unit and be ready to go. And we had friends and family that had obviously started having their children a bit younger, and actually their children are the same age as our children, and that's really nice that everyone just slots in together and they can play when we meet up.
Yeah, that's lovely. That's lovely. So as you went through the process, you had decided early on, and then when it came to looking at the information for the children, Kat, how did you and your husband find that process and deciding the right children for your family?
I think what's really helpful is part of the training, we actually talked about how to look at the information as it comes in, because we were given lots of different information about lots of different children, and actually our 2 came with very little description to start off with, and they described an ideal day, which was very similar to an exercise we'd done to describe an ideal day. And so we said, oh, we must find out more about these children, and then got completely overwhelmed by the amount of information that got sent through, but it was quite technical and sort of not about them as people. And actually that's where the Family Finder really helped us get that extra information, being able to talk to the children's social worker, the children's family finder, and actually find out about them as people. They came one lunchtime, and before they'd left, we knew that they were our children.
That's lovely.
And then obviously you have to start all the paperwork for that. But yes, no, it was really exciting.
Yeah. And Stephen, how did you find that process?
Yeah, very similar. The amount of information you can receive is, I think, is very emotive, and it's quite overwhelming. And when you're then looking at, you know, 2 lots of that in one go, it's quite a lot of information to digest. And we were really lucky. Again, our Family Finder was really good at kind of stripping it back down, kind of almost personalize it, injecting a little bit of color where it was very black and white. And then we had the same situation where social workers came down, they brought photographs, we had videos that we could see, and we were very fortunate where we were also told before they left that we were the only couple that they were pursuing in light of finding a home for the boys.
And how was meeting your 2 boys?
Oh gosh. So we were at a Life Appreciation Day, which was very, very emotive. And there were a couple of things that didn't quite go to plan with childcare, and we were kind of asked there and then whether or not we wanted to meet our youngest, which completely took us by surprise because it was not planned and we weren't expecting it. And then it was kind of decided, because we had met him, that we could have kind of a bump into meeting with our eldest. So it was a very long day because we then had to wait for him to finish school. He came in with his foster carer and then met us, and we weren't introduced formally. We just happened to be friends that were in the vicinity. And it was completely overwhelming. It was like being hit by a bus at high speed. But a moment that we often talk about, and one that we'll never, ever, ever forget. Just life-changing, really.
Wow. And Kat, how was your first meeting?
Yes, so we got to see our son. Actually, we'd gone to his primary school, and it was only from a distance and across the playground, but we could see him playing and running around, and that was really special. And then we were sort of making sure that we weren't getting spotted and things. But actually, it was the first time we turned up, and he opened the front door. My husband was in front, and he just went, "Daddy!" And yes, honestly, it was very overwhelming, but it was lovely, and they were just so excited, because they'd obviously had great preparation beforehand as well. But it was, you know, we went in and we had this structure of the things that we could do when we first met them. And it was really, really great, but so tiring, and that emotional overload. So that first meeting wasn't very long, but yes, it's really special.
And you were saying it was tiring. How many days or weeks or months did it take for you to get some sleep once they arrived?
It definitely it took the first couple of weeks, but terribly exhausting, because we thought we'd got everything we needed roughly, but I think I was going around putting the children to bed, and then I would nip to Sainsbury's pretty much every night to pick up an extra this and extra that, or something that we'd forgotten. So it took a little while to get ourselves into a routine, and you know, things like online shopping and setting all of that up actually is quite useful. And then having people you can call on that can just drop something over if you need it, that's quite useful.
And the social workers advocate for you to gradually build up contact with the rest of the family, don't they? So you concentrate on yourselves, don't you?
Yes, so for us, I think for the first couple of weeks, it might have been 10 days, it was just us as a family unit. We then met Chris, is my husband's parents, because they were going to be if in case of an emergency, they were going to be the people that we would call on. And then we sort of went to the park and we just had fun, and it was really nice for them to actually see them in person, because they'd heard loads about our children. We'd been sending them videos and photos, but actually meeting them and, you know, seeing that they're real was been really good. And my mum has been absolutely amazing, and so supportive. And my son absolutely adores her. Will do absolutely anything for Granny, which is lovely.
I've just got a picture of lots of cake. And Stephen, how did you prepare for your boys coming, and how were those few days and weeks?
So we were really lucky. We were kind of put in contact with the boys' foster carer relatively early on into the match. So we were able to have great dialogue about what the boys would be coming with, what they wouldn't be coming with. We made sure that we matched up things like toothpastes, washing detergents, fabric softeners. And we were able to kind of prepare as best as we could this space, if you like, with the amount of information that she was able to give us. We spent a lot of time in probably the 2 weeks before the boys arrived, making sure that we really had some time to just rest, build up our immune systems, relax, sleep in, kind of indulge in a little bit of self-care, if you like, before we knew that was kind of gonna, because you hear a lot about introductions and how they are absolutely exhausting. And I think, like you say, when you've got more than one child that you're trying to form a relationship with in those, you know, those first few weeks, it's very labor intensive. So yeah, we really made sure that, you know, we kind of indulged us as much as we could in that time, as well as preparing the logistics for the boys, getting rooms ready, all of those sorts of things.
Wow, crazy. I can't imagine. It's just from one day is you're living a life that's so different to the next day, aren't you? They arrive and then
that instant, it is that we, you know, I remember that first night sitting at the table and thinking, oh gosh, wow, they're home. All of a sudden we now have a 3-year-old and a 7-8 month old upstairs. Like, how did that happen?
Yeah. And Stephen, so for people thinking about adopting siblings, what would you give as a top tip for people early stages thinking about it? Is there anything you can think of?
Give it time. You know, my boys, they, at the point that they come home, they were each other's only constant. So they had a relationship that was already formed and established. So there's a tendency initially to feel like you're on the back foot with that. Nobody could make my youngest, and still can't make my youngest, laugh like my eldest could. But I think it's sitting with that and being okay with the fact that they have a relationship. You know, it's very much in our case, a 4-way street. You know, the 4 of us had to learn to gel together. yeah, try not to rush it, you know, all good things come in time.
That's really, I think that's just really, really important, just to relax and let it be. Yeah. And Kat, is there anything you would advise or suggest?
I think patience is definitely one, and actually we found that our two absolutely loved story time, and so actually building that into a part of our day on a daily basis, having a really good amount of story time together, with the four of us on the sofa, was really positive, and just spending that quality time, doing things that we all enjoyed.
Quite quiet, not too busy, and build that up. Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so we can take questions. We've got a comment from someone saying, you're bringing back such warm memories of when we first met our family. I have tears in my eyes too. Have adopted siblings through PACT.
Oh, thank you.
So if anyone's got a question, let's pop it in the comments. I have one about, I guess your younger ones may be a bit too young, but I was wondering about when they came to you, did you see a difference in their response to when they joined you, or were they both reacting and responding in the similar way? Stephen, can you?
I think we were really lucky. We had you know, the boys had a great foster carer, so there was lots of prep work that was done, and again, that initial kind of moment where they were introduced to us, that, and that, you know, they very much knew, or our eldest very much knew, that we were Daddy and Papa, and he was so excited about that. Sorry, what was the question again?
Did you know? It's fine. Did you notice any difference in the response?
Yeah, so I think this is again where our family finder was really good, because the reports that you receive and the documents that you read, they really are relative to the person that's in, you know, written them, so interpreting the child and the environment that they're in. I mean, immediately our setup, our house, our outlook was very different to the environment that the boys had come from. And as a result of that, their behavior changed almost instantaneously. You know, we didn't have the caged lions that we were told about, because they had a sense of space that, you know, they could occupy in a way that they couldn't before. So for us, certainly some changes were relatively instant. Other things not so much. Some of the behaviors that we were told to expect, we saw straight away. Others didn't come out until the boys felt kind of secure enough, I think, in our attachment to start pushing the boundaries. So yeah, kind of a bit of both, really.
And Kat, what about your two?
Yes, I think, as you say, it's in that sort of first couple of weeks, everyone's sort of really trying to build the relationship. So I think I thought we had the best behaved children ever. You know, you'd ask them to do something and they'd do it, and it was fun. You know, and you think, oh wow, this is really easy. And then as they got more confident, you know, no came out a bit more. And actually, that's completely healthy, and that's what you should expect from children, that they do sometimes say no to things. I think otherwise behaviour, our eldest sometimes came across a little bit younger than some of his peers. He's born in August, so he's one of the youngest in his year anyway. And when he first moved in, I think he grew. It must have been about 3 inches within the first 3 months of moving in. So just the whole sort of going from being, you know, one of the very short ones in his class to actually, you know, completely shooting up and catching up height wise was quite interesting to see.
And how much food did that involve?
Yeah, well, yes, he's our eldest will pretty much eat anything, in comparison to our youngest, who's perhaps slightly more selective.
All those trips to Sainsbury's, Kat, that you did in the early days.
Okay, we've got a couple of questions. So would you take more siblings of the children you already have? So let's start with Stephen.
This was one of the questions that we were asked by a matching panel, actually, because birth parents were considered young enough to probably continue to have more children. And we, as I say, we have always been open to having a large family. So yeah, we very much were of the opinion that if more children came along and we felt the time was right for the boys, that we would absolutely be receptive to, yeah, more children coming in.
And Kat, did you talk about that?
We did. So I think our birth family situation, they were a little bit older, so we were very much like, oh yes, we want to be told, you know, absolutely, we want to know if our two have any other siblings, and it's about what would be right at the time, is what we've always said, is what would be best for our two. But yes, totally, if you know, if there was another little one of them, then yes, absolutely. We've got a great relationship. They've actually got an older half sister, and we have an amazing relationship with her, and get to spend some time with her, which is lovely.
Yeah, I was about
I mean,
to ask that one.
Just to add those, that, you know, that you don't have to either. So if you do take, I mean, you both said that you would and you would consider it, but both of you have said what's really important is the children you've already, you know, have within your family, to make sure it's right for them. And for some of our adopters, you know, they'll adopt a sibling group of 2 or 3, and it's not right for them to take another sibling. And that's absolutely fine. But in those cases, because it's, you know, we're talking about siblings and the importance of that relationship, we do look at then, how do we keep that contact going and at some kind of relationship. Like you said, Kat, the time that you spend with your children's older sister is amazing, and she's part of your family now, isn't she? So even though she's never lived with you and she's not your daughter, that sibling relationship is still there.
Yeah, it's so valuable. And it's those questions of, oh, I don't remember this, or I don't remember that, and you've only got so much information available to you. But actually having the older sister that we can go, oh, well, actually, do you know? And she can say, oh yes, well, this happened, and you know, it gives you the context and answers some of those unanswered questions.
Okay, we've got a few more questions. Mandy, one about spare rooms. Do you have to have a spare room for each child, or can they share?
It's a good question. I mean, ideally, you'll have a room for each child, particularly depending on the age, or the potential to have a spare room for each child. For some children that are perhaps younger or same-sex siblings, ones that may be used to sharing with while they're at birth family, or when they're with foster carer, then sharing a room is absolutely fine, and actually the best thing for the children. So sometimes it's fine that they can share a room. Sometimes with older siblings, or maybe they need their own space, or they're different sexes, then they will need a separate room. But what I would say is, it's, you know, we look at, or you should be looking as, you know, parents now, but also in the future. So it could be you've got same sex, you know, 2 girls, for example, who are sharing a room, but in your mind, or a girl and a boy sharing a room, in your mind, you're thinking, well, will they be able to have their own space sometime in the future? And people are really creative now. You know, I've seen over the years, you know, lots of rooms getting split into 2 and things like that. So yes, you do need to think about it and have that space, because children do need space as they grow. But when they're little, you know, for some of them, they can share a room.
I guess at the beginning we do advocate that people have a spare room, don't we? Because we don't know, at very early stages, we don't know what the family's going to look like in the end.
So you would need at least 1 room. So they can't share a room with you. We'd need them to have, yeah. You know, if you come forward to adopt, you need at least 1 spare room, which you could put, you know, one child easily to sleep in, or maybe a sibling group of 2. And that's part of the process as well. For some people that come forward to us, then they're not sure, you know, if it's 1 or 2. I mean, I know you guys have said that, you know, you were clear you wanted a sibling group, but that's not the same for everybody. Some people come forward thinking they can only afford 1, they've only got the space for 1, but actually through the process, they extend that, and they go on to have 2 or 3.
Yes, I was hearing from an adopter last week who was saying that her social worker was magic, and they were considering 1, but their social worker said, I think you might want to, but I think you may be not feeling quite so confident. She said she was absolutely spot on. We did want more than 1, but we weren't sure if we were up for it. And she said, and they went for 2 in the end, and got a lovely family. Okay, so we've had a thank you for sharing your experiences, and it's so helpful for a couple also considering siblings. How have you found dividing your attention between them when they first arrived and as they've grown older? It's a really great question. Stephen, how have you managed that?
It was probably slightly easier for us having our youngest being very young, because when our eldest was, when his need initially was greater and his emotional need, if you like, was greater in those first couple of weeks, we were able to kind of filter off the younger one, take him out, and we could kind of split our time between the two of them. And I think this is where, as kind of your journey as a family grows, you really learn to kind of pull on and use your support network around you, put your hands up and ask for help, and also allowing yourself that one-to-one time with the kids as well, where you as a single parent get to spend time with the individual children. But yeah, call on those around you when the time feels right.
And Kat?
Yes, so we had, because our eldest was actually at school, we had some carved out time with our youngest pretty early on, because obviously whilst you're at school, you're out from the family home for quite a few hours. So it was almost the reverse of making sure that we were spending individual time with our son when he was back. So for me, having individual time with him was much easier to do at the weekend, because my husband had gone back to work, unfortunately, at that point. So it was, lots of time with us as a family together during the week, and then at the weekends making sure that my husband was spending time with my daughter and I could spend time with our son, just to make sure that we were both building those relationships.
And you've both said you've got big families, and I was just wondering how their cousins and how the wider family encompassed your little ones into that. How did that jigsaw work? Stephen or Kat? Go for it, Kat.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, we have quite large families, not masses of children in our families actually. So they have become very, very lucky children with doting aunts and uncles, but actually have, as the children have got older, we've had the aunts and uncles coming around and sharing new skills. So our two can now both inline skate. My youngest just got given a skateboard for her 6th birthday, which is slightly terrifying. I tried standing on it once and nearly fell off it. So it's being able to get them to share the things that they really like with the children, and that's been really positive. For us, it's sort of where we're godparents to some of our friends' children. They're, from our kids' perspective, they're a bit like cousins, and they kind of get treated as such, because the parents are probably their godparents as well. So that's been really nice for them.
Stephen, what about your tribe?
Yeah, we're like Kat, we're having the sibling group, like our two have kind of age-wise, they've knitted in really nicely with cousins, and actually the elder cousins were really keen to understand perhaps the more slightly complex side of the process. And I remember when we were completing the paperwork for the adoption order for our eldest, or both of them, sorry, my eldest niece was very curious about what was happening, so we were explaining, and she burst into tears because she was so excited that this meant that she could keep her cousins, and she actually came with me to post the documents off, and we photographed it. And so yeah, we're very lucky age-wise, they've kind of knitted in, and I think my husband's side, his family effectively went from no grandchildren, nieces, nephews, to 4 within the same year. So that side of the family grew really quickly.
It's pretty loud at Christmas.
Yeah.
Oh, so Mandy, from the professional point of view, is there anything else to add in terms of what people could consider at this point, thinking about adopting siblings?
No, I think keep an open mind. Like I said, some people come forward and it, quite clearly, or thinking that that's the only option is one, but it's not. And even if you are coming forward thinking about 2, maybe think about 3. And, and on a serious note, sibling groups are 2 wait a long time, but sibling groups of 3 and 4, almost impossible to find families. I understand why, because we've heard about it and the finances and the space and all of that, but please keep an open mind. And often, if you are able and you have those skills and you are willing to stretch yourself and your family to take a larger sibling group, there can be some financial support for that. So don't let that necessarily, you know, be a barrier to thinking about it, because we can help you think through that.
And I guess it's for people thinking, you know, if they've got the energy for the sibling group as well.
I think that's it. I think that's key, actually, because it is busy. And the things, you know, the process is exactly the same. The assessment process is the same. The panel process is the same, going through it with your social worker. There might be some little bit of different focus. For example, thinking about why you want siblings, your own sibling relationship, but also it might be good if you haven't been around children a lot to gain a bit more of experience about that if you're looking at a sibling group, particularly a larger sibling group. So some of our families that come through are thinking about sibling groups of 2 or 3, and we can put them in touch with other adopters that have, if they haven't got any in their network, because it is, I think Stephen and Kat probably agree and know better than me, it's a shock to the system when you adopt anyway. You adopt a sibling group, it's busy, you know, that learning to adapt. So the more practice you can have being around children, the better, really.
Excellent, thank you. Well, thank you to Kat and Stephen for sharing your time. I think Stephen's got some gardening to do from the in the background. And I just want to say, you know, thank you to everybody who's joined. If you would like to find out more, then please have a look on our website, pactcharity.org. And we have our information events. We have one next Wednesday, and we have 3 a month, so we can slot you onto one of those to find out more. And also, you can also speak to our inquiries line about speaking to an adopter, to speak in depth one-on-one, and you can speak to a social worker one-on-one if you would like to do that and talk about your own circumstances. Then let our inquiries team know, and their number is 0300 456 4800. And just wish everybody a lovely Friday and a lovely weekend, and take care.
Thank you.